So, hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing fine. Let me check here still my sound. So, you guys, I'm just started the stream here, and I would appreciate your feedback about how you see me and how you hear me. From my side here, looks everything good. Let me know if you guys have any problem by from hearing me or seeing me, or something doesn't add up in your display. Just let me know and I will try to correct it from here. Hello everyone. Okay, so I'll just give it like 20 seconds or so, and if I don't see anyone having problems, I will just start. Yeah, hi Chip. I know my small window, it's better so you don't see my old skin. It's important to see the terminal, not my face. My face is not that beautiful. The terminal is beautiful. Okay, so it seems to be everything is fine. So let me actually tell you a couple of things before we get started. So we have the chat here on as you can see, the logo is covering my face. Okay, my face is not that beautiful, but maybe I will move that a little bit higher. So I think that's better, right? Let me check this actually on the stream. Yeah, it might be maybe a little bit. Sorry, I'll just make it a little higher. I think here, this will do it. This should do it, right? Yeah, that's better. Okay. Okay, so couple of things. There is always a little delay in what I'm saying and what you're hearing. I tried here on YouTube to put the ultra latency so low as possible, so that's the max I can get out of the stream, but it should be like like maximum like a 6 seconds, so it should be it's not that bad. So a couple of things before we get started. And hi everyone, it's really nice to see you guys coming to the chat. So in this video, we are going to install Arch Linux from scratch, and we're going to use the November ISO, which was released actually last week. And we're going to focus actually on in this installation to LVM, and we're going to use also systemd-Boot as a bootloader. This is going to be a UEFI installation. I'm going to give you some guidances also for people who has NBR. So we'll just walk through the video, and I'll just explain you a couple of things for you guys who have NBR systems. Hallo, hallo aus Deutschland. Oh, super. Aus Essen. Hallo, hallo, hallo. This time it's gonna be LVM only. I'm trying to focus just on a couple of things because otherwise the stream is gonna be too long. But I'm gonna do anyway now a stream every weekend, every month with a new ISO, and every time I'm gonna change it maybe to something else like Lux encryption or Btrfs or whatever. Salut aus Zürich, jo super. Super. Okay. Another thing, you guys, of course, I'm really happy to see you here, and I would say let's get started. What I did here, I prepared actually a virtual machine, which is KVM for you who are curious to know which virtual machine I'm using here on Arch. This is an Arch Linux machine, as you know. I'm using only Arch as a main distribution on my main machine. So the virtual machine program the virtual software I'm using here for running virtual machines is actually KVM. Especially Arch runs really well here. Thank you for the donations. I see someone who donated to in the chat here. That's something that I wanted to also say in the chat. You have a possibility to donate to the channel, which will be greatly appreciated. I know, guys, this is a hard time for everyone, so don't feel if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. Thanks anyway for any donation that comes in. So I'm gonna start with the installation, and I'm gonna stop, every couple of steps. And if you guys have any question, just drop them into the chat. chat, and I will try to answer them when I catch them up. And if I miss something, just re-ask again, because I cannot watch at the screen the whole, I mean, I cannot watch at the chat screen the whole time. So let me pull over here my virtual machine. And if you see me switching my head back and forth, it's because I'm using two screens here. So my virtual machine is on my right side, so you will see me like this. My camera is on my main display, which I'm not using with the virtual machine because it's a 4K monitor and it sucks a lot of stream speed. So I'm doing I'm doing this with the 1080p monitor, which is better. So let me start over. Let me start here the ISO, which I already mounted. Now I'll go full screen. So we have something new here already when we boot the ISO. Now I stopped the counter here, but you've seen probably very shortly the counter actually started at 15 seconds, and that's because actually we have a new option here, as you can see in the second line, is install Arch Linux with speech. This is something new. Which is new, I think, with the ISO 2011 ISO. Actually, let me pull over here my notes. Yeah, it's an accessibility feature that has been added now since the 2020 November ISO, and it's going to be available now going forward. So it's a special installation for people who need speech, and there is a whole tutorial wiki on the Arch Linux website, and they explain you how you can start this installation up and how you can basically use speech for people who need that. I think it's great that Arch Linux is offering this, for people who needs this. It's great, and since Arch is a distribution which is doesn't provide an installer, I think it's great to have a speech guiding you through. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just start the machine. So I'm just going to hit enter. This is again a UEFI system. And I see actually there is something that I would like to actually change. So actually let me shortly do something here. Just try to restart this machine. There is a small trick that I have to use here in the virtual machine, which is, I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to press E here, and I'm going to go to the end of the line, and I'm going to say video equal 1920 per 1080, because I'm going to anyway increase the fonts afterwards on the console, but this way I'm going to use the full resolution of the display, as you can see. This is because KVM somehow doesn't recognize the resolution of the screen at startup, but this will do it. There you go. So, okay. Hi, everyone is coming to the chat. Well, nice to see you. Okay, so you guys know already probably when you boot up the machine, the Arch ISO boots with a US keyboard layout, which, as you probably know, I don't have. So you can find out actually the keyboard layout string of your country if you type in locale CTL and then list dash key maps. And oh, you can see already my keyboard is not working because I'm typing the wrong keys here. Key maps, there you go. And then you can use the the grep function to filter basically the string that you're looking for. So I know already the string I'm looking for, so I'm gonna now load this into memory by typing in load keys, and then the string is de_ch-latin1. There you go. And now my keys are working fine. So I don't make any typos. Now the next thing I'm gonna do before starting the installation is increase the font size so that you guys can see better. Now the Arch ISO comes already with the Terminus font available, which is great, and we can change this in the terminal by typing in set font. And then the font name is ter for Terminus, and then dash. And I'm going to define the size here with 132N, which is going to display the 32 pixel size here on the display. And as you can see, then it's much easier for you guys to see as well. So I'm going to type in hexit, and I'm going to restart from scratch. So I'd say let's get going. I'll look just shortly at the chat if I see anything important here. KVM, okay, good. Hello, everyone. Just Arch Linux is fantastic. I agree with you, Luigi. All right. So let's get going. Now, the first thing we need to check is internet, as you probably know. So we'll type in IP space A. And because here I have actually the Ethernet cable connected, you can see I have on my Ethernet a connection there ending with 16. This is the IP address. Now, as you probably know already, since the July ISO, as we have here on the fourth line of the text, if you have Wi-Fi, you need to use the IWCTL utility. And I have a video on this, on how you can connect it then to the Wi-Fi. But basically what you can do, you can type in, if you have Wi-Fi and you want to use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, you can type in IWCTL. And then you're going to see the prompt here where you can scan for networks. I think I think the command is no, I'm not sure now. Well, yeah, we need to find out first the name of the adapter, which in this case we don't see on the list because I don't have one. But if you do have a Wi-Fi adapter, you will see it in the list here. It's going to be probably like something like WLAN 0 or something similar, and then you can type in here station. I think station WLAN 0 scan station WLAN 0 get networks to see the networks, and then station WLAN 0 connect, then the network name, and then it will ask you the password, and then you will connect it to the internet as well. Now it's difficult to demonstrate this because I don't have a Wi-Fi here, but it's pretty straightforward. Then once you are done connecting to Wi-Fi, you can just type in here exit, and you go back to the root ISO. So there you go. All right, so let's get going, and we have internet as we've seen. So the first command I'm gonna type in now, it's timedate-ctl. The timedate-ctl actually command, I can type it here, timedate-ctl. Gives us basically informations about the time in our machine. So the two things we need to be careful here are the system clock synchronization and the NTP service. Now, the one I need for the installation, because we need to install a lot of packages, is the NTP service. So we need to activate the NTP service here. And to do this, we need to type in timedate-ctl and then set-ntp true. It's a Boolean basically function here. And if we retype in again the timedate-ctl command, we will see now the NTP service is active. Now we are going to activate also the system clock a little later during the installation, but for the NTP service, this is it. Now the next step would be to take care of our mirror list, as you probably already know. And to do this, we need to use Reflector, which comes already pre-installed in the ISO. So to use Reflector, we type in reflector -C for country. You'll put in your country here. In my case, now I am in Switzerland, so I'll type in Switzerland. If you have countries like United States, you need to put the two words United States into quotes, otherwise Reflector will not recognize the parameter. And then -A for the age of the server, so since how many hours the servers have been synchronized. In my case, I'm going to put here 12 hours. I'm going to give it a little bit of tolerance here. And then --sort. We're going to sort the mirrors by speed, so rate, and then --save to save the mirror list in our directory where the mirror list is, which is /etc/pacmand, and then mirror list, and hit enter. It's going to take a second. There you go. And then we can we can refresh the mirror list by typing in pacman-syy and hit enter. And there you go. We have our mirrors up and running. So let's get going here. Let's type in lsblk. See what we have. So you guys see here we have one disk which is called VDA. So this is the disk we're going to use to create the logical volume. Now, what I'm going to show you in this installation is we're going to create our logical volume here in this disk for the root partition and the home partition. So I'm going to create a root partition and a home partition, and we are going to create a logical volume for each one of those partitions, because later in the tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can actually expand the root volume or the home volume or both when you basically insert new disks in your system and you want to maybe give the whole new disk to the root logical volume, or maybe you want to create a partition on this new disk, and you want to give a certain amount of space to the logical volume of the root or the home. So we will look at these two scenarios basically, because this is going to be purely as an example. You'll need to see how you want to use LVM in your machine. I can tell you, for example, on my machine here, I have well, I can show you actually my terminal, if I can pull it over here. And if I type in here lsblk, this is my main machine. You will see I have here NVMe drive. This is my main drive with the logical volume, and I have the second drive also as a logical volume. I don't have a home partition or a home directory, home partition, better said, in my system. I just have everything under one root volume. This is my personal choice, but you can see basically I have the first disk logical volume expands into the second SSD. So both SSDs are 512 gigabytes each. So altogether they make for a logical volume of around 2 terabytes. And this is how I set up my machine. But I'm going to show you how you can play with these things, and then you will need to decide yourself how you want to play with LVM if you have the possibility to do that. So let me close the terminal here. So we are back here on our machine. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is create the partitions for the disk. Now, this is, I said, as a UEFI system, so I have to create a UEFI partition because it's mandatory. And we need to create also a root partition because it's also mandatory. Now, if you have an MBR system or a legacy system, you need to create a root partition. This is mandatory. Home partition is optional, but you can create also, of course, a swap partition, which is probably recommended if you have a PC with not so much RAM. But the boot partition is not really mandatory. Although, again, this is always the point. If you have, MBR system, a legacy system, you will install grub basically on the first, on the disk itself, not in the partition. But if you have a legacy system that is using a GPT label, you will need to create a boot partition with a boot flag so that you can, boot the machine there. So there are basically three scenarios there: UEFI, sorry, UEFI with a EFI partition mandatory, root partition mandatory, MBR, the root partition is mandatory, recommended is the swap partition, and then you have MBR with the GPT label where the boot partition is definitely recommended with the boot flag, and the root partition is mandatory. In any case, if you have an MBR system legacy system, you will have to install grub on the disk, not on the partition. So, but this is a UEFI system, so I will have to install, if I install grub, but I will not install grub in this case. I will install anyway systemd-Boot. It's going to be on the EFI partition. So let's go ahead and create our partitions. For this, I'm going to use gdisk. Which is already coming also included in the installation ISO. Now, why I'm using gdisk is because gdisk is the counterpart of fdisk, but gdisk is meant for GPT labels. And since I'm installing on a UEFI system, I want to have a GPT label, and I'm going to use gdisk for that. But you can use fdisk, but we have gdisk for this, which is for GPT labels, so I'm going to use that. Or we can use also cfdisk, which is a little bit more graphical, but I'm going to use gdisk in this case. So I'm going to type in gdisk, and then the device name /dev/VDA. Now in this case it's VDA because I have a KVM machine. If you're installing this on VirtualBox, it's probably going to be STA. Or if you're installing in another machine, it might be something else. As you've seen in my main machine, the main drive is NVMe 0 and 1. So it really depends on, on the kind of machine you have. Then we can hit enter here, and we can create our partitions. So creating new GPT entries in memory. Let's create the first partition here by typing N for new and hit enter. The partition number 1 is default, so I'll accept this. And the first sector is also default, and I'm going to accept this as well. And the last sector defines the size of the EFI partition, which in my case, it's going to be 260 megabytes, which is the size recommended in the wiki. So I'm going to type in here plus 260 capital M and hit enter. Now I need to tell the system this is a EFI system partition, and right now we see if we press enter, the default is 8300, which is the Linux file system. This is not what I want. I know the code for the EFI system partition, but if you don't know the code, you can type in here the capital L, and then it allows you basically to search for what you're looking for. And I'm typing in here EFI, And you can see it tells you EF00 EFI partition is the code. So I'm going to type in here EF00 and hit enter. There you go. And we change the type now to EFI system partition. Now let's create the root partition. So I'm going to type in N for new and hit enter. Partition number 2 as a default is fine. First sector is also fine. The last sector for the root partition here, I'm gonna, since the disk is what, 50 gigabytes, I'm gonna give it, let's say 30 gigabytes. So I'm gonna type in here plus 30G. Doesn't really matter because I'm gonna expand this anyway afterwards. And then I'm gonna hit enter. And again, we need to define here the system type. So again, I'm gonna type in capital L for search. And I'm gonna say, I'm looking for a LVM code here. And you can see the code for LVM is 8E00. So let's type in 8E00. Now let's create also the home partition. So N for new, you know the drill. Default number 3 is fine. First sector is fine. On the last sector here, we basically use the remainder of the disk. So we can accept the default by just hitting enter. And I want this to be also an LVM. So I'm going to type in the same code we used before, which is 8E00. And hit enter. So that's all there is to it. And we can type in W here to write the changes to the disk. And we can hit enter. And we can proceed by hitting Y and hit enter. There you go, the operation completed successfully. So we type in lsblk. And we have our 3 partitions. So EFI partition, root partition, and home partition. So far, so good. You have guys any questions? I'm just looking in the chat to see if I see something with some questions about the procedure until here. Because from here on, we are going to start looking at the LVM. So that's why I'm asking for now. Okay, nothing so far. So can you please do a video configuring i915? I might do that in the future. I will have to do this on a laptop with an Intel card. Okay, so let's get going, guys. This is where the things become interesting because we're going to look now at the LVM. Now, I assume you guys know what an LVM is. It's a logical volume management. Put it very easy. It's like creating a pool of storage basically from several devices. I know I'm doing this I'm putting this in very easy words. It's of course much more detailed than that, technically speaking, but just to make it short, you can create a pool of storage based on several devices. You can tell to the system where, if you have a preference where to store certain data, you can resize them, you can make them smaller or bigger, whatever. So it's a very flexible tool, and it has been around since a long time, and it's also very mature. So that's why actually I'm still using it also on my main machine. So let's do this. The process to create for creating an LVM is based on 3 steps: creating the physical volume, creating the volume group, and creating the logical volume. Now, normally, you would go through all 3 of them. But there is actually a small trick that I learned, which is actually creating the volume group is going to create the physical volume for you directly. So we can skip one step there. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create as I said before, we're going to create 2 logical volumes. One is for the root and one is for the home partition. Now, let's start with the root logical volume. So to create the logical volume, we need to first create, as I said before, the physical volume and the volume group. But we'll begin with the volume group. So we can type in to create the volume group, we can type in vg create. And then we need to define the name of the volume group. So what do we want to call this volume group? I'm going to call it, this is just an example, I'm going to call it vg root because it's easy to remember. And then we need to tell the command where is this volume group going to be. And as we saw before, the root partition is going to be VDA2. So I'm going to put in here /dev/VDA2. And when you hit enter, you will see it says it created the physical volume and the volume group. So we basically, skipped one step here, so we can save a little bit of time. Now we can check here the volume group. If we type in VGS, for example, we see we created the volume group. It has one physical volume, that's the hashtag with a PV, logical volume none, because we didn't create that yet. And we have the attributes, the size, and how much is free, which is of course empty. So, and we can have also more details about the volume group if we use the VG display command. This is going to show us basically the name, the format, the metadata, etc., etc., etc. We have also in the end here the volume group UUID, in case you're curious to know this information. Anyway, so we created the volume group for the root. Now we can create the logical volume. So to create the logical volume, we can type in lv create. And I'm going to type in here -n. -n stands for name, because I want to name the logical volume the way I want to. Because if you don't, the system is going to pick one for you. Normally, it's going to be like LV0 or LV01 or whatever the machine somehow decides by itself. I want to be able to create it, to create the name the way I want to. So I'm going to use the -n option. And the name is going to be LV root. It's going to be in pair with the volume group VG root, LV root. It's easier to remember for me. And then I'm going to define where I want to create actually this logical volume. And that's going to be on the volume group that we just created, which is VG root. And then I can hit enter. Okay, so I made a mistake here. Of course, I forgot to define the size of the volume group. And I'm going to type in -L. So that's one option actually that I wanted to show you guys. There are two options that we can use here. The L option that I'm using here is going to use a relative size that I'm going to specify. The -L option is going to use the precise size that you want to define for the logical volume, which we're going to do afterwards when we insert more disks in the machine. Anyway, I want to use the whole space that I have in this volume group. So to do this with the -L option, I'm going to type in 100% free. So the whole space that it's in this volume group is going to be used for the volume group. And then I'm going to define the volume group that I just created, which is VG root. And then hit enter. There you go. So the logical volume now has been created. And we can check this by typing in LVS. And as you can see, logical volume is LV root. The volume group is VG root with all the information available. Or we can also use LV display. And it shows you basically more information about the volume group. So this is the LV path is very important because we're going to use this also when we format the volume group and when we will have to add it also to the systemd-Boot. And then you see all other informations here. Also, there is the LV UUID and so on. So this is creating the logical volume for the root. Now, let's go ahead and create also the logical volume for the home partition. And just looking at the chat here, if I pick up some questions, what is the advantage of systemd-Boot? Nosy, ask me the question again when we get there so that I don't forget it. Right now, if you have any questions, if there are any questions about LVM, otherwise I will continue and then we'll focus on systemd-Boot when we get there. Okay. So we use the same process to create the logical volume for the home. So let's create first the volume group by typing in VG create. And I'm going to call this VG home because, easier to remember. And then the device name, which is /dev/VDA3, and hit enter. So we created again the physical volume and the volume group. Now we create again the logical volume as we did before by typing in LV create and -N. I'm going to call this LV home, just to make it in pair with the volume group. -L for the size, and again I'm going to use here the whole space in this partition. So I'm going to type in 100% free, and then the volume group is VG home, and hit enter. And there you go. So we created now the volume group also for the home. Let's BLK. You can see LV root, LV home. So we created now our volume group. So we are ready to continue the installation. Now, after we format it, we mount the partitions, we install the packages, we make basically the base installation. I'm gonna then, after the first reboot, I'm gonna turn off the machine and install 2 extra disks in this machine. And then I'm gonna show you how you can expand those logical volumes in there. So let's go ahead now and format these partitions. We need to format VDA1 and the two logical volumes basically. So let's begin with VDA1, which is the EFI partition, and as you know, the EFI partition needs to be formatted with the FAT file system. So I'm just checking some things before we get started here with the formatting. So Jakub is asking, why use separate volume groups? Why not put root and home in the same? Well, if you do, then you have only one group, and it's the same thing like when you want to have the root partition and the home partition, because in the home partition is your data, and in the root partition is just system packages. If you like to divide those, then you need to create two volume groups for that. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. In my case, for example, as I showed you before, in my main machine, I don't have a home partition. I just have everything in one box as a root. But some people like to have the home partition separated, and this is how you can do it. So let's go ahead and format now the partition. So let's begin with VDA1. As I said, this has to be a FAT file system because it's a EFI partition. So let's type in mkfs, make file system, and then .fat dash capital F 32. So it's a FAT32 file system type. And then the partition path, which is /dev/vda1, any enter. Now we're going to create also the file system for the logical volumes. Let's begin with the root. So let's type in mkfs. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to use ext4 for this time. The next time we'll change this anyway. So ext4. And then we need to put in here the logical volume path, which we saw before when we typed in lvdisplay. If you remember, it was /dev/vgroot. We're talking about the root logical volume, and then lvroot, and hit enter. There you go. Now we do the same thing for the home logical volume. So mkfs.ext4, and then /dev/vghome/lvhome. If I type correctly, there you go, and hit enter. There you go. So let's clean up the terminal. I like to have my partitions in front. So we formatted now the partitions, we can mount them. So here we need to basically mount first the root partition, which is going to be mounted under the mount directory, which is the installation directory in Arch Linux. So to do this, we need to type in mount, again, /dev/vgroot. We are using here the mapper name, /lvroot, and we're going to mount this under /mount. There you go. Now, we need to create two directories, the boot directory and the home directory, because we need to boot VDA1 and VDA3, I mean, the logical volume for the home partition in there. Now, because in this tutorial we are using systemd-Boot, we need to create the boot directory only. If you create the boot EFI directory, it's not going to work. Systemd-Boot needs to have the boot directory and not the boot EFI directory. On Grub, you can install it on both. Depending also on your motherboard, there are some motherboards I've seen also in several videos, and forums, also on the Arch Linux forums, that some motherboards on some PCs require to have the EFI directory or the EFI directory even. So that really depends on the computer you have. Anyway, if you want to install the systemd-Boot bootloader, it has to be /boot. So to create these two directories, we can type in mkdir and then -p, because we want to create multiple directories. We need to create two directories. If I'm not using the -p option, it's going to give me an error if I try to create more than one directory. Now /mount, it's already existing. What we need to create are two directories. I'm going to create both at the same time by using the curly braces here. So one is boot and the other one is home, and then close the curly braces. So this is a shortcut to create both partitions at the same time. There you go. Now we can mount VDA1 into boot and the LV home logical volume into home. So let's begin with VDA1. So let's type in mount /dev/VDA1, and then we're going to mount this under /mount/boot and hit enter. And we're going to mount the logical volume for the home partition into the home directory. So mount /dev/vghome/lvhome. And the mount point is /mount/home. There you go, and hit enter. Now, LSBLK, just to check the mount points here, you see VDA1 is on boot, LV root is on mount, LV home is on home. So everything looks good. We can install the base packages. Now, let's go ahead and install it by typing in pacstrap. The installation directory is /mount. And the packages we can install are base. Well, this we have to, otherwise it won't work. And then we need to decide also the Linux kernel you want to install. So you know probably there are many Linux kernels that you can install. There is the Linux kernel, which is the one I'm going to install here. But we have also the Linux-LTS kernel, for which actually I did a video last week on the channel. We have also the Linux Zen kernel, which is a more broad kernel, which works probably on more systems. It supports more hardware. And we have also the Linux hardened kernel and some others. But in this tutorial, I'm going to use the Linux kernel. Now, just to remember, if you're installing the LTS kernel, when we are later installing the headers, the Linux headers package, we need to install the Linux LTS headers, but we're going to get there anyway. So let's install Linux. And I definitely recommend you to install also Linux-firmware, because it's going to provide some extra firmware for the machine in case something, is not working out of the box. Then I'm going to install also LVM2, because we are building here an LVM system. And I'm going to install also an editor. Now, here it's not a religion. You can choose whatever editor you want to choose. I'm going to choose here Vim in my case, but you can install Nano, you can install Emacs, you can install any other if you like. And what else? We can install also here the U-code for the processor. So if you have an Intel processor, you can install Intel-U-code. And if you have an AMD processor, like in my case, you can install AMD-U-code. And I think for the base packages, that's gonna be it. So we can hit enter. So this is gonna take some time, depending, of course, on the connection of the machine to install. So let me check the questions here. So somebody's asking, what should I do if I have small RAMs and want to create a swap partition? Depending really on the RAM size. So the rule of thumb is if you have, it should be the swap partition should be double of the RAM, but this is true until I think what I saw also from the documents from Red Hat. It's just true really until 4 gigabytes. If you have 1 gigabyte of RAM, definitely create at least 2 gigabytes of swap. If you have 2 gigabytes of RAM, create 4 gigabytes of swap. If you have 4, I would say probably create 4. If you have more than 4, I wouldn't probably create more than 4. In this system, what I'm installing now, I didn't create a swap partition because I'm going to create a swap file, which I'm not going to use the swap anyway in this system. Every time I install a swap file, even on my main machine, it's always at 0 use because I have plenty of RAM. But okay, somebody's still stuck at VG create. Well, take your time there. Anyway, this video is recorded and it's going to be live immediately after the live stream is finished. So you can always go ahead and rewind and rewatch everything. And if you have any other question after the stream is done, just let me know in the comments below. Okay, so let's get forward here. So the packages are installed, as you can see. So let's clean up the terminal. Now, the next step is very important. This is creating the file system table. So the file system table is the file where all the mount points of the system are stored. And we can generate this actually in Arch Linux. There's a script for this, which is gen fstab, and then /mount. So what we have right now in the system as a mount point, we need to put them in the fstab in the installation that we just did. So we are going to append this information. Oh, well, actually, I forgot -u here. The -u option is basically saying that we want to create an fstab file using the UUIDs of the partitions. UUIDs are unique identifiers for the partitions, and it's always advised to use those because they never change. And then /mount, and we're going to append this information under /mount /etc, which we just created, and then fstab, and hit enter. Now, before moving forward, it's always advisable to check the fstab file that the information is in there. Otherwise, you move in there, there is nothing, then it's not going to work. So we can output the content there by typing in cat/mnt/etc/fstab and hit enter. And you can see exactly what we need to see here. We have the root partition at first, which has the UUID, the mount point, file system type, options, and checks, the boot partition, and then we have the home partition. So basically both logical volumes and our home partition. So it's fine. We are going to enter the installation now, create the swap file, and we have to enter also the swap file in here. We'll do this in a second. So let's move into the installation. Right now you see the prompt says arch ISO and root at arch ISO. Now we need to enter the installation here, and we can type in for that arch-root, and then the installation directory is /mount, and hit enter. And you can see the prompt change basically. Now we are in the installation itself and not anymore in the ISO installer. So we can type in, or actually let's clean up the terminal. And before proceeding creating the swap file, let me check. All right. So to create a swap file, you probably know already, since the kernel is 5.7, if I'm not mistaken, we cannot use anymore the fallocate command. So we need to use the dd command. So to create a swap file, we need to type in dd and then if equal. So we need to basically create a swap file with the /dev/0 device. So we create basically an empty file of /swap file. So we create an empty file called swap file, and BS. So the base count, the block size is going to be 1 megabyte. Actually with a capital M, and the count is going to be, depends really how big you want to make the swap file. In my case, I'm going to do 1024. So it's basically creating a 1 gigabyte swap file, and then status equal progress to see what's going on when we hit enter now. So there you go. It creates a swap file of about 1 gigabyte. So we need to now modify the permissions of the swap file so that it can be read. So to do this, we type in chmod, so changing or modify the permissions. The permissions we need are 600, which is going to give reading permissions into the swap file, and then /swap file. Now we can make the swap and activate it because we have the right permissions on it. So we can first make the swap by typing in mkswap and then /swap file. And we can activate the swap by typing in swap on /swap file, if I type it correctly. There you go. So the swap file is done. Now we need to put it in the fstab file so that we have it when we boot the machine. And then let's clean up the terminal and let's type in vim in my case because it's the only editor I installed right now, /etc/fstab. And let's go down here at the end of the file, and best practice here, I'm gonna create actually a comment, and I'm gonna call it swap file. Now, the device is /swap file, doesn't have any other name. The mount point is none, it doesn't have any. The file system type is swap. The options are defaults, and the file system checks are 0 and 0. So we basically don't check this, is anyway just there. Then we can save the file and exit vim, and the swap file is in there. There you go. Now we have some housekeeping to do here. We need to work on the localization, host name, host passwords, installing packages, blah, blah, blah. And then we will install the systemd-Boot. And then afterwards, we're going to expand the logical volumes. So let's go ahead and work on the time zone first. The time zone, there is a command for that, which is time zone, I believe, time zone CTL, I think, and then list-time zones. And we can use here the grep filter to narrow down the search, because otherwise you're going to have a list of time zones which never ends. The time zone that refers to Switzerland, the city that refers to Switzerland always as a time zone is Zurich. So I'm going to type in here. You replace, of course, this with your city. And time zone CTL is not available. Okay, which was the command? And I don't remember it. I think it's, time date CTL. Sorry, my mistake. Actually, I'll pull up the last command here and replace time date CTL. Time date CTL. There you go. There you go. The time zone is Europe/Zurich. So to enter this in the system, we need to create a soft link or a symbolic link, better said. So to do this, we type in ln-s, sf actually. So we are forcing the symbolic link, and then /usr/share/zone-info/ the string we just found, which is in my case Europe/Zurich. And we're going to link this to /etc/local time. There you go. Now that we have the local time, we can also synchronize the system clock to the hardware clock in the installation, but we will need to do it anyway afterwards when we boot the machine one more time. But I'm going to do it anyway, so I'll type in hwclock --sys2hc, so system to hardware clock, and hit enter. That's it. So now it's time to work on the locale. Somebody's saying time.ctl is bloat. Yeah, it's bloat maybe, but you know, it's part of systemd, and if you want to find out the time zones, that's one way you can do it, and it's already installed anyway by default. So let's work now on the locale. So to do this, we need to work on the locale.gem file. So let's type in vim/etc/locale. If I type in correctly, locale.gen. There you go. And we basically search here for the locales we are looking for. So I'm going to look for English US here. So I'm scrolling down with Control F, you guys, if you don't know. Probably many of you know, but for the ones who don't, Control F to scroll up, down, and Control B to scroll backwards in Vim. And let's delete the hashtag here for English US UTF-8. And that's it for me. If you have any other locales, you can also uncomment those. Now save the file and exit Vim. And now we can create the locales by typing in locale-gen and hit enter. Boom, there you go. Now we need to also put the string into the locale.conf file. Now there are several ways to do this. There is the echo command, but I'm going to use this afterwards for another thing. So to enter the string, we can type in also vim/etc/locale.conf and hit enter. You'll see both approaches. And the string is lang equal the string we just found. So en_us.utf-8. That's it. Now, I'm gonna do this maybe a little later. Yeah, in the vconsole.conf file. We'll do this in a second, sorry. So let's save the file here. There you go. Now, if you chose also a different keyboard layout at the beginning of the video, we need to put this also in the vconsole file, vconsole.conf file. So this time I'm going to use another command. It's not the vim command, it's the echo command. And then I'm going to enter in that file keymap equal, and then the string I found at the beginning, which was de_ch-latin1, so that this keymap is available when I boot the machine. And we're going to append this info to /etc/vconsole.conf. There you go. And hit enter. So now what's next? We need to create the host name. So to do this, we can type in echo, and then you can give the name to your machine. I will call mine Arch LVM. You can call it whatever you like. And then we are going to append this information to /etc/hostname. And hit enter. Next, a host file, the famous host file. So we can type in vim/etc/hosts. We need to edit this file a little bit differently. So let's go here at the end of the file. We need to create here several lines, as you probably already know. First is the IPv4 of the local host. The IPv4 is 127.0.0.1, and the name is localhost. I'm not going to go in depth here about this file. We can do a full tutorial about networking on Arch, but we'll do this maybe once eventually. Then the IPv6 is ::1, and the name is again localhost. And the last line is 127.0.1.1, and then the host name we just chose, which is archlvm.localdomain, and then again archlvm as our host name. And then we can save the file and exit Vim. So now we can actually give a password to the root user. So we'll type in passwd and hit enter. And we can select our new password and retype it. And the root user has his own password. So let's go ahead now and install the packages we need for the system. So we need to basically install networking packages. We are not going to install grub because, as I said before, we are going to install here. We are going to use a network systemd network D, which is already actually installed. But we need to install EFI boot manager and the networking tools and some other tools for your machines. Now I'm going to give you here some packages which are going to work for most of the system. Bluetooth, printing, and some other stuff. It's impossible to give packages, for every computer, but it's going to be actually a good base to start from. So let's type in pacman, the package manager for Arch. The first package I'm going to install is EFI boot MGR. Now, if you're installing this on an MBR system, you don't need this package. You can leave this out. You don't need this. This is just for UEFI systems. Next, network manager. Now, let me tell you about something about Network Manager. Somebody asked me in the comments in some of the videos why I'm using Network Manager instead. Thank you. There is a typo here. Yeah, Manager. You saved me time there. Why I'm using Network Manager instead of actually, I don't need Network Manager. Sorry, because we are this. Oh, actually, I do. Sorry, I'm confusing now with the boot. Why I'm using Network Manager instead of systemd network D? Because it's already installed in the system, right? I mean, when you install Arch, systemd network D is already in. You don't need to install anything else. So why don't you use that? The reason is it's systemd network D is actually fairly simple to configure. The thing is, for most users or users who then are going to install probably a desktop environment, the systemd network D does not actually provide an icon to manage this, to manage the network. So you will have to do it on the command line. Whereas Network Manager, it's providing not only the command line, there is a text command line also, and there is an icon for the desktop environment. So it's a little bit probably easier for several people to use. Yeah, thank you, Boot Manager. I'm terrible at typing. Sorry, guys. So I want to install also network-manager-applet. It's going to be useful, especially if you're installing GNOME. It's going to provide you with the icon. I'm going to install also Dialog, another network tool. And if you have Wi-Fi, you can install also, of course, WPA_supplicant, which is going to give you tools to connecting to, for connecting to Wi-Fi. I'm going to use also mtools and DOS FS tools. These are two packages that we can use to work with FAT file systems. And if you have external drives which are using the FAT file system, or you have a Windows computer, these are going to be useful. Now, next, what can we install? We can install Git. Oh, what did I do here? I think I missed something here. Okay, sorry guys, I have to do this from scratch. Okay, maybe I learned typing like this. EFI boot MGR, network manager, and network-manager-applet, and dialog, and what did I say? WPA_supplicant, and mtools, DOS FS tools, right? And what did I say? Yeah, I want to install also Git. This is going to be useful if you want to install, packages from the AUR. And we can install also Reflector so that it's available, in our installation. And let's see, we can install Blues and Blues-utils. These are two packages that we can use for Bluetooth adapters. So if you have one, you can install this one. We can install also CUPS. This is the printing system. If you have HP printers, install also HPlip. There you go. For other printers, there are other packages on the Arch Wiki. Now I can't remember them out of my head, but if you go to the Arch Wiki, you find also packages that you can install for other printers. What else? I would install also dash utils. This is going to be useful, especially if you're installing afterwards some window managers. And it's good to have anyway some extra utilities for the sound. I'm going to install Pulse Audio, the whole um, the whole system, and also eventually Pulse Audio dash Bluetooth for the if you have some Bluetooth headsets and stuff or stuff like that. What else can we install here? I think most of it is there. Blues, cups, HPLib, also utils, Pulse Audio. Oh yeah, we can install also XDG-utils and XDG-user-utils. Sorry, user-dirs. This is for creating user directories and some other utilities. Another package actually that comes to mind now is also bash-completion. Now, this is not installed by default, and I definitely recommend you to install it because if you're installing, for example, some things like VDO or Stratus afterwards, for what I have videos coming up in the next week, it's gonna help you a lot because it's basically if you don't remember certain commands, it's gonna basically give you some cues, of what you can type next in the command. But for now, I think it's gonna be it for now. So I can just hit enter here. And we can accept all these defaults. So let's go ahead and install this. It's going to take a second to install. So I'm going to look in the chat if there are any questions. Can you do a video on how to set up SSH for Access Arch remotely from Android? Okay, never thought of that. What do you think about the Anarchy installer? I haven't tried that yet. I tried only the Arch 5 for now, yeah. But I have to try that actually. I have several comments about that. Yeah, the net speed is fairly fast here. I have a gigabit connection. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to make all the videos. All right, so we have everything there. All right, so now we need to actually perform several steps. The first one, before we go to the bootloader, is we need to actually work on the mkinit cpio file. Yes, I'm drinking water because I'm very thirsty. I'm talking too much. And that's because we are using LVM. So we need to actually modify the mkinit file. We need to put the LVM hook in there. Otherwise, the system will not boot afterwards. So to do this, we need to type in vim/etc/mkinit-cpio.conf and hit enter. Now we need to scroll down here to the hooks section, which is somewhere here. There you go. And we need to enter before file systems, this is very important. Before file systems, we need to enter LVM2 and a space. Okay, that's very important. Then we can save this file and exit Vim. And now we need to recreate the images. So to do this, we need to type in mkinit cpio-p and then the Linux kernel that you're using. So if you're using the Linux LTS kernel, you will need to type in here linux-lts. And otherwise, if you're using the Linux kernel, you just type in here Linux. And actually, yeah, and then we can hit enter. So it's going to take a moment here to rebuild the image. And now I remember actually two packages that I forgot to install. I'm going to do this in a second. Two very important packages that we need to install still. One is they're both two development packages. One is base devel and the other one is Linux headers, which I didn't install. So let me install them very quickly. pacman-s, so base-devel, and then Linux-headers. There you go. Gonna accept the defaults here and install everything. Sorry, I forgot these two packages before. It's gonna take a second to install here. From Modena, me. Ciao, bel modenese. Oh, if you guys don't know, actually, I'm originally from Italy. Modena is very close to where I was born. I was born in Reggio Emilia, which is maybe 40 minutes from there. So nice to see you guys from Modena. And for those of you who don't know, Modena is actually the place where the Ferrari is built, and Ferrari is my last name, so I'm very proud of that. But I don't have a car, so don't worry. So we have LVM there. So now let's move to the bootloader. And as I said, we are going to install now the bootloader is going to be systemd-Boot, which is already actually present in the system because it's systemd. So to install the bootloader, we have one command. It's going to be boot ctl and then -- path equal. We basically define the path where we're going to install the bootloader. As you remember, where we created the partitions, the EFI partition was /boot, and that's a requirement for systemd. It has to be /boot, otherwise it won't work. So /boot, and then, well, install, and hit enter. Boom, there you go. The installation is now successful. So now we need to edit two files. One is the loader.conf file, which is under this boot directory. And we need to create an entry for the bootloader so that when the machine boots, you basically see, Arch Linux, hit enter, boot the machine. So let's type in here cd/boot and hit enter. So we go into the boot directory here. And let me actually pull over here my notes. There you go. All right. So let's type in ls. What I wanted to show you here, we have here the loader directory. Probably you see it in there. So we need to go in there. So let's type in cd loader and hit enter. ls. We have loader.conf and the entries directory. So the entries directory is where we need to create entries for the bootloader, and the loader.conf is going to be the configuration file. So we need to edit first loader.conf, and then we're going to create a directory for an entry for the bootloader. So let's edit the loader.conf file by typing in vim and then loader.conf and hit enter. Simple thing here. So if you want a timeout or you don't want a timeout, that's up to you. I want to have a timeout in this case. So I'm going to uncomment this line. And I'm going to say I want a timeout of 10 seconds. And that's just an example. You don't have to do this. It can be 10, it can be 10, it can be 5, 3, 2, or you can actually put the comment and you will not see anything. It's just going to boot the first system. And for the default here, I'm going to actually replace the whole string with Arch, because that's the name of the entry I'm going to create afterwards. Then I can save this file and exit vim and ls again. And now let's go into the entries directory. So let's type in cd and then entries. ls, it's empty. So we need to create basically an entry here for the systemd-Boot bootloader. So let's type in vim, and I'm going to call this configuration arch.conf. So arch.conf and hit enter. We'll just have to give here some parameters to the bootloader so that when it starts, it can boot basically. So the first parameter is title. So title, I'm going to call the installation Arch Linux. You can, of course, change this however you want to. The Linux parameter, which is going to boot the kernel, is going to be /vmlinux with a Z -Linux. This is the image we have in our installation here. The next parameter is init_rd. This is basically the parameter which defines the init RAM fs of the system. So /init RAM fs -linux.emg. So that's basically the image. And let's go to the last parameter, which is the options parameter. So options. Now here I want to define the root volume because that's where the machine will boot into. So root equal /dev/vgroot. This is the root volume group /lvroot. This is the logical volume for the root. And then rw for read and write. And in my case, you don't have to do this. This is just a parameter that I enter for me on this machine because it's KVM. It's going to be video equal if I find the equal sign here, my keyboard, equal 1920 per 1080. It's the same thing I did at the beginning of the stream, if you remember, because I want to have just basically the full screen resolution. Another thing here we can enter, somebody is commenting in the video correctly, we can actually enter also, I think above here, it's the U code for the processor that you have in the machine. I think, yeah, this is something like this, init rd slash intel dash ucode.emg. So if you guys want to do this, I'm not going to do this in this virtual machine, but if you guys are installing this on a metal, you can definitely add this. Thank you for pointing this out in the comments. Once you've done that, you can basically save this file and exit Vim. And let's go back to the home directory. And now we need to activate some services that we need when the machine boots up again one more time. So to do first, let's activate Network Manager so that we have internet when we boot. So let's type in systemctl and then enable network. And I'm just going to use the tab key here. It should actually work. No, it's not working. OK. Network Manager with capital N and capital M. Now we will have internet when we boot the machine. Next, Bluetooth. So pull up the last command with the up arrow here and replace Network Manager with Bluetooth. And hit enter. And also the printing system here, we can replace Bluetooth with org.caps.capsd and hit enter. There you go. So clean up the terminal. And what else? Well, we can create a user for the system. So user add the user dash capital M, dash M capital G. So the M switch creates a home directory and the capital G switch creates a supplementary group for the user. Now every user that you create in Linux creates a group automatically which has the same name as the user itself. So if I create now my username hermano, that's going to create the username and it's going to create also a group for this user with the same name. Now the supplementary group, the capital G, is because we want to give another group to the user besides its own group. And in my case, I want to use the wheel group, which is then going to be configured to have sudo privileges. So the wheel group you can enter after the capital G and then the username you want to create. So in my case, it's my name and hit enter. Now we need we give a password to the user. So pass wd and then the username and hit enter. Choose your password and retype it. There you go. Now let's give this user sudo privileges. To do this, we need to use the visudo command, but because I'm using Vim, I need to tell visudo that I want to use Vim to edit this. So I need to type in editor equal Vim and then visudo and hit enter. We scroll down until we find the root here, which is down here. So the root, you can see it's already uncommented. We need to uncomment the first line of the wheel group because this one is the line which has all equal all. So we are anyway required to enter a password when we want to use sudo privileges. If we give privileges with the no password, that's a little dangerous, so I'm not going to do that at all. But I'm going to actually uncomment this line so that my username has sudo privileges. And that's basically it for the base install. So what we need to do now, we can type in exit and we go back to the ISO and to the root ISO. And now we need to unmount the partition. So you mount -A or -R, whatever you like, doesn't really matter. And then we can reboot the machine by typing in reboot. And if everything works, we should be greeted by the bootloader. So let me try this out. I need to anyway remove here the ISO from the system. So let me actually switch this off. Otherwise, it's not going to work anyway. I will just remove the ISO here and pull up the machine again. There you go. So let's hope it works well. If everything works here, we should see systemd boot out of the box. There you go. So you can see it had 9 seconds. It was counting from 10 seconds because this is what I chose. So this is systemd. So let's boot up Arch Linux. And if everything went well, you should be able to boot into the console because we haven't installed anything. So you can see that is console. So I'm gonna log in again with the root user because we are not done here. There you go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is actually, well, for you guys, I have already actually internet because I have a cable. Now, if you don't, and if you have Wi-Fi, because we have Network Manager, we can use an MTUI. This is the text user interface for the Network Manager. What this allows you to do, allows you to go to activate a connection. And here you will see a list of networks, whether it's wired or wireless. And if you have a wireless one, you can just select yours. And when you hit enter, you can enter the password and you will be connected automatically to the Wi-Fi. Okay, so that's how you can do it. Once you're done, you can just hit back here and then quit. And we are done with Wi-Fi. Now, the next step, of course, this is just for you guys so that you can see the terminal better. I'm going to install the Terminus font because it's not installed by default. So I'm going to type in pacman-s and then Terminus-font. I think that's the font. Yeah. And then I can set the font, set font ter132n. Bam. Then you can see better. There you go. So LSBK. So this is the base install with the LVM. Now, what we can do, we can actually, we have two choices here. We can, I can add two disks to the base install here, and I can show you how to expand those disks. Or we can install a graphical environment very quickly. I'm not going to spend much time in the graphical environments guy in this tutorial because it's really focused on LVM. And then we can work on the LVM from there, whichever you guys want to do first. If you have any questions until here, I'm going to look now at the chat so that I can see if somebody has any question before I proceed. If you guys want to have a desktop environment, I'm not going to do, as I said, work on desktop environments in this video. I'm going to install probably, if you want me to install one, I'm going to install XFCE or GNOME because they're very fast to install. And then we can work on the LVM from there, whichever way you want to. I can do it also from the console. Mm. Okay, so somebody's saying XFCE with the light DM. I'm not gonna use the slick greeter because it's actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's let me check this. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's deprecated or it's not anymore developed. Am I right? Wait, let me check light DM. I don't know why I saw somewhere that it's not anymore developed. Oh, maybe that's not the slick rate. I think it's the slim, or it has another name like that. Sorry, that's not the slick. Now I'm not gonna use the slick because it's on the AUR. I want to use packages from the main repository just to make it a little bit more simple. Anyway, I installed both. Now that's gonna take too long. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna install actually then XFCE because it's a little lighter, and then I'm gonna add two disks to the system, and then I'm gonna show you how you can expand how you can expand the logical volumes. Okay, don't worry about guys who want to have KDE or other desktop environments. I'm gonna do other installs, live streams. I'm gonna do maybe the next time KDE for the ones who wants to have KDE. Okay. So let me install then first the graphical. We need to install the graphic drivers, Xwork, desktop environment. So I'm not going to install them both because it's going to take too long to install them. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's type in pacman-s graphics driver, depending on the card you have. So for Intel card, XF86-video-Intel. If you have AMD card, replace Intel with AMD GPU. And if you have NVIDIA cards, that's going to be now interesting because, as you probably know, with the 5.9 kernel, the NVIDIA drivers don't actually work fully. There should be an update coming up actually very soon, mid-November, which is going to repair those things. But if you're installing now the NVIDIA packages, it's with the 5.9 kernel, for example, CUDA is not going to work. It's just not going to work. There is an advisory for this also on the Arch homepage. If you're going to look at this, that's going to be it's going to be written. So um, there is a version, I think, of the DKMS version of the drivers that you can install to go, to go around this problem. But if you can install the NVIDIA drivers, but you have to count that CUDA is not going to work until NVIDIA is going to patch the drivers anyway. In my case, though, I don't need to install anything because it's a virtual machine. So the next package I want to install is Xorg. And I'm going to use Xorg most of the time also when I do my videos because Wayland is not compatible with any screen recorder for now. I tried every screen recorder, but they don't work with Wayland. You basically record a black screen. You hear everything you're saying, but you don't see anything. So that's why I'm going to use Xorg. And then we're going to install the Light DM display manager with the Light DM-GTK-Greeter. I know it's not the most beautiful one, but it's very fast to install. And then I'm going to install XFCE. And I don't know, maybe I can install also, I think it's XFCE4, yeah. And then also maybe XFCE4-goodies for some extra stuff. And let's install maybe also one browser, so Firefox. I think that's going to do it because then the focus is going to be anyway on logical volume. So let's hit enter here. And, oh, Firefox. Okay, hermano, super. Let me pull up here, Firefox. And hit enter. There you go. There you go. Proceed with installation. So it's like 600 megabytes. That's going to be very fast. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a car actually. I don't have any car. I am carless. Not careless, but carless. It's just not possible to have a car here. So there you go. That was fast. So what we need to do, we need to, well, by the way, actually, for the ones who don't know, why I installed the LightDM GTK greeter is because without that, LightDM will not work. So when you install LightDM as a display manager, you need to install also at least a GTK greeter. That's the one that LightDM recognizes as a default. If you install another greeter, you need to edit then the lightdm.com file and tell LightDM which configuration file you want to use. So let me actually also already configure LightDM in the virtual machine. You don't need to do this, but I need to do it. Otherwise, it will not display the correct resolution. So let me type in vim/etc/lightdm and then lightdm.conf. And what I'm looking here, it's at the seed group somewhere here. What I'm looking for here is the display setup script. And I need to do this in the virtual machine. You don't need to do this if you're installing on Metal. But basically, I need to tell LightDM, the resolution of my display. Otherwise, on the virtual machine, it will not display correctly. So I'm not gonna go through the command itself. It's xrender. This is the command that it's used by Xorg to define the resolution of the display. -- output virtual1. This is the name of the display that I have. And you can find the name of the display with the xrender command, basically. And then -- mode. And the mode I'm looking for is 1920 per 1080. That's all I need to do here. Then I can save this file and exit Vim. And last step here is to activate the display manager. So I'll type in system CTL enable. I can use actually -- now so that it starts immediately, and then LightDM. I should actually work. Let me see. Let me try it out. Let me try this out. Oh, there you go. It works perfectly. Perfect. So enter my password here. And we should be in XFCE if everything went well. Wow, boom, there you go. Well, it doesn't look particularly beautiful, but that's not the focus of this stream anyway. So This is the XFC desktop environment for you guys who don't know, but many of you probably already know anyway. So what I'm gonna do here, let me check if I have, I think the terminal is here. Yeah, the terminal is already there. What I need to do here, I think I need to enter my keyboard layout because otherwise I will keep typing stuff that I don't want to type. So let me go to keyboard here and under layout, yeah, it's using the English layout. So I need to add here the Swiss German, which is here. No dead keys, and I will remove the English one. Now, don't confuse. This has nothing to do with what we did in the vconsole.com file. That's for the console, okay, without graphical environment. So that doesn't change what we need to do here in the graphical environment. So let me test this out. Yeah, seems to be working fine. And let me see here. Yeah, it's working fine. So beautiful. So this is the desktop environment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch off the machine and I'm going to insert here two disks, two extra disks, and then we are going to extend our logical volumes, from the terminal. Okay. So let me power off the machine here now that I have a nice graphical environment. Shut down. And I wish you guys could see that, but I think you can't because it's too big to see. So let me just add two disks here very quickly. I'm gonna add a 30 gigabytes disk, and I'm gonna add, let's say, another 30 gigabytes disk. So there you go. I know you cannot see that, but now I boot up the machine again, and I'm gonna show you this in a second. So let's boot. Okay. Enter here. There you go. So let me open up again the terminal. Go make the. This size is good. You can see probably it's maybe a little tad too large maybe. So if I type in lsblk here, lsblk. So you can see I added two disks. So one is VDB and one is VDC. Okay. So what we are going to do, actually, let me switch to the root user because I want to type sudo the whole time here. Sorry, this is the sysadmin habit, lsblk. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use two approaches, okay? I'm going to use the VDB disk to expand the root logical volume. And I'm going to use the whole block device there, meaning I'm going to use the whole disk. That's one approach. And then I'm going to expand the home logical volume. But before doing that, I'm going to partition, actually, VDC. I mean, it's a very pragmatical example. It's just to show you how it works and what you can do with LVM. It's entirely fictional. Whether it's useful for you or not, I don't know. It really depends on your machine. But I just want to show you the two approaches. Okay, so how you can use the whole block device and how you can use a partition where you can extend the volume. Sometimes maybe if you have a disk of 100 gigabytes, maybe you don't want to use the whole disk for LVM. Maybe you want to create several partitions there, and maybe some of these partitions are for backup, which have nothing to do with LVM, and you want to have some of these partitions in the logical volume. So it's just to show you how the process works, and then you can adjust it to your needs. So the first thing what I'm going to do is to extend the root volume using VDB, using the whole disk in VDB, okay? So let me here, again, lsblk. So let me extend the volume of the volume group, the logical volume of the root logical volume. How do we do this? Well, again, we need to basically use two commands. First, we need to extend the volume group, because if we don't, the volume group is like the carpet. It's actually like the floor. So if you don't extend the floor first, you will not be able to extend the carpet neither. So the carpet is the logical volume, the floor is the volume group. So we need to first extend the volume group so that afterwards we can extend the logical volume. Okay, so let's extend first the volume group for the root by typing in vg extend. That's the command. We want to extend the volume group. Now, which volume group we want to extend? Well, we have two. We have VG root and VG home. This is going to be for the root, so the name is VG root because we want to extend VG root. Now, where we want to extend this logical volume, this volume group, it's to VDB. As I said before, we are going to use the whole VDB block device for the root. So we're going to put in here /dev/VDB. Okay, that's simple. VG extend, VG root, and then the disk. So we are going to extend the volume group here to the whole disk, and then we can hit enter. This is going to create, again, the physical volume and the volume group at the same time. So it's a bonus, you just spare one command here. Now we need to extend the carpet, now we need to extend the logical volume. So to do that, we can type in LV extend. I think extend, yeah, that's correctly written. And then we can say, okay, how much do we want to extend this logical volume? So in this case, for the root, I'm going to use the whole device. But because I'm not creating the volume here, I am extending the volume. So I'm going to use again the -L option like we did before. But now I cannot put in 100% free. I need to put in here plus 100%. 100% free, because we are extending it. So we need to say how much do you want to extend this? So plus how much you want to extend it. So we need to have the plus. If you put 100% free, it's not going to work. It's going to give you an error. Now, another very important option is the -R option. This is going to resize the logical volume. If you don't do this, then you will have to use another command afterwards to resize the logical volume. So this will avoid basically another extra step in the process. Okay, the -R, you can put it here, or you can put it also actually at the beginning. It doesn't really matter, but I recommend you to put it in because it's going to resize immediately the logical volume. Otherwise, you will have to use another command for that. So then we need to tell the system, which logical volume are you extending? And you remember, we can use the mapper name, which is /dev/vgroot/lvroot. So we are extending the root logical volume here, so we can hit enter. And as you can see here, it says changed from 30 gigabytes approximately to approximately 60 gigabytes. So we used the 30 gigabytes of VDB. So how does it look like now when I type in lsblk? Well, look for yourself. We have, strange enough, you say, well, it's 60 gigabytes. We had 30 gigabytes partition, yes, but it's counting the logical volume. This VDB was 30 gigabytes. The partition was 30 gigabytes. It gives for the logical volume 60 gigabytes. You can see here, the partition is still 30 gigabytes. The disk is still 30 gigabytes, but the logical volume is 60 gigabytes. Okay, so this is how you can extend your logical volume for the root user. Okay, this is one example of how you can use your whole block device, the whole disk basically, for extending the logical volume. So this is nice, if you have a small disk and eventually later you will enter a new disk and you want to extend your pool of storage, LVM, it's a great tool for that. Somebody is asking in the chat here, this is going to on YouTube as a video later? Yes, it is. It's been recorded by YouTube anyway, and then it's gonna be live basically probably after a couple of minutes after the stream is finished anyway. Okay. Now, the second thing is we can actually extend the home volume group to VDC, okay? In this case, though, I'm gonna change the approach so that you can see how it works, but then, again, this is just to show you how the process works. It doesn't really matter, the logic here, it really depends on the machine that you are on. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create here on VDC, say one partition, and I'm gonna leave the rest of the space maybe for something else. Maybe I'm gonna use it for as a backup, or I'm gonna format it with another file system, whatever. It's just a partition that I'm gonna use maybe later. And if I want to still use it afterwards for LVM, I can create another partition there as an LVM and use it to expand there. But anyway, let's format then VDC So I'm going to create a partition for VDC. So I'm going to use gdisk, which I believe is not installed by default. So let me install this quickly by typing in pacman-s and then gdisk. And there you go. So let's type in gdisk and then /dev/vdc and hit enter. So let's create one partition. And for new, partition number 1 is fine. First sector is fine. Last sector is the size. So let's say the disk is 30 gigabytes. I'm going to give it a half. So I'm going to create a plus 15 gigabytes of space here. And we need to define the code. The code for LVM is 8E00. Remember, we did this before. And then I can write the changes to the disk. So I type in W and hit enter. And accept here by Y and hit enter. It's going to take a second. There you go. The operation has completed successfully. So lsblk. VDC1 is there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to extend the home logical volume, but not by 15 gigabytes. I'm not going to use all of it yet. Okay, just to show you how it works. Again, this is purely hypothetical. It's just to show you how the process works. So again, we need to first expand the volume group before we can expand the logical volume. So let's do this by typing in vg extend. And we need to tell the system which volume group are we extending. So it's vg home, you remember. So vg home. There you go. And then we need to tell basically the system where is this volume group, where this volume group is that you want to extend it. And we know it's VDC1. So let's go ahead and type in /dev/VDC1 and hit enter. Okay, now you created again also the physical volume here, so that's fine. Now we need to extend the home logical volume, and this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So let's type in lv extend. Again, -r. Don't forget this option. It's going to resize the logical volume automatically. Well, in this case, then I'm going to use the -L option because I want to tell the system to define this with an absolute size. In this case, it's 15 gigabytes, the volume group. So I'm going to say, I'm going to extend for now until, I don't know, let's say 8 gigabytes. So I'm going to type in here plus 8G, capital G actually. And then the logical volume path, which is, as we saw before, /dev/mapper, vg home /lv home. And then we can hit enter. There you go. So you can see it changed from 20 gigabytes to 27 because we added the 8 gigabytes. And we can go ahead and resize this, with more space, create more partition and resize and re-extend, etc., etc. So now lsblk, you can see now the VG home is now split in two. So in the first disk and in the second disk. So if I type in now lv display, you can see, for example, the home volume group, it's about 27 gigabytes here, and the volume name, VG name, volume group name. So you have all your informations here, or you can use also LVS. It shows you basically the same thing. So it shows you the volume group, the logical volume, and the size of it. Okay, so this is logical volume. Extending logical volumes, how managing logical volumes, volume groups, and so on. It's, at first it looks a lot of work, but once you understand the process and you get used to it, it's actually fairly simple. So if you have a lot of, if you have disks, multiple disks in your machine, and you want to use them for LVM, LVM it's definitely a great tool to use, and it's very mature as well. Okay, so I think for what I wanted to do in this video, it's gonna be enough. I'm not gonna customize XFCE in this video because that's not the focus in this video here. But in the next time, I'm gonna do another installation when the next ISO is gonna be available in December. I'm gonna do an installation in December, maybe with another file system, might be Btrfs or something else, and maybe another bootloader. And I'm just gonna change this every month a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit different things, not always the same thing. And it's also more fun for me to do different things. So I'm gonna move over to the chat here. If you guys have any questions about LVM or systemd-Boot or something else relating to Arch Linux that you would like to ask, go ahead and shoot it in the comments. I'm reading at the chat right now. Uh, um, can you do a video on setting up Looking Glass? I don't know Looking Glass. I have to look at it. I'm using OBS right now to. Okay. How did you create the second disk in a virtual machine? So in KVM, you basically turn off the machine and then you go to the info tab and you see on the left side there is a column with the list of the hardware, right? So under there is an add button. So you just click add and it's normally gonna show you add disk because that's the first one, first option. There you can decide the size of the disk and then click add on the bottom right. And that's how you can add disks there. What do you think about Void Linux? Oh, actually, funny you mentioned that, Francesco, because I actually am working on a Void Linux. I started to work on it yesterday. Um, if also, I really like Void Linux. It's for those of you who don't know, Void Linux it's a um, independent Linux distribution. It's using Runit as an init system. And so far, I have to say, I really like it. It's minimal, which I like. It's fast. It's easy to configure. I like Runit as an init system. It's very simple to configure as well. So I really like it, and I'm gonna do a video. I'm preparing the video now about Void. It's gonna come up in a couple of weeks, but I really like it. Yeah. What do you think about Luke Smith? Look, every Linux YouTuber for me is great. I don't have any, I don't have any, I don't have any judgment who is better or who is worse. These are the kind of things which I really don't care that much in when I also work with Linux or with in Linux on YouTube. I look a lot of channels. I look still actually a lot of videos from Luke Smith and from DT. Those are fantastic guys. They are making great things also for the Linux community. And I think anybody who's making Linux videos, for me, it's absolutely great. Why the cursor is huge? Well, that's something actually with KVM. And I think it's great actually that I have it because people can see it better when I do videos. So somebody's asking, wonder what happened to the Linux gamer girl? Yeah, so Alex, she moved on to other projects on Instagram. That's why she's not anymore making videos on the channel. Okay, so if you guys don't have any other question, we can leave it here. Don't see any other questions about LVM or anything else. I will post in a few days, maybe some, a poll on the community to ask you guys, maybe in the next stream, would you like to see which kind of installation you would like to see? You would like to see encryption? Would you like to see Btrfs? Would you like to see Grub? Would you like to see, whatever? And then we'll pick it from there. Any video coming up for how to install Gentoo? Yes, actually, yes. I have actually Gentoo already installed here on VirtualBox. That's the video. Well, that's the installation I showed you guys some days ago on the community. And I'm gonna record the video very, very soon. About Gen 2. I think it's gonna take me some time because Gen 2, let me put it this way. Gen 2, if you know about Linux, it's not that difficult to install. It's just that it takes a heck of a lot of time. And especially if you don't have a powerful machine, it's gonna take a lot of time to compile. So, here I did this on VirtualBox. It took me almost like with the compiling and everything, it took me maybe like 50 minutes, something like that, or maybe a little longer. I don't remember exactly. But the thing is with Gen 2 is, to make a tutorial with Gen 2, you need to follow I will follow the manual because there are a lot of steps involved, like in Arch. But Arch is a little bit more streamlined because you are installing actually binaries. You're not installing for source. You don't have to compile basically anything. But in Gen 2, you need to really understand what you are doing. And the commands per se, the logic per se, it's not difficult. But the process per se is also not difficult, but you need a lot of time to compile the packages. So, and the thing is, if you are investing a lot of time in installing Gen 2 and something goes wrong during the installation, yeah, then you're stuck in the middle of the installation and you lost almost 1 hour. It's something that we have to count with Gen 2, especially when you are the first steps. But um, Gen 2 is an interesting distro. You just need to have a lot of time. What do you like these fanboys who only love Linux Mint? So, look, fanboy for me, this is not in my vocabulary. I don't have any Linux religion, and I embrace every Linux distribution, whether it's Arch, whether it's Linux Mint, whether it's Debian, Ubuntu, because I have a lot of respect for every developer who is working, doing these distributions. I take myself lucky enough to be able to use them and to learn about Linux. So I respect every developer who is working behind these distros, and I have no preferences in the sense that I have no religions. And I have my preference in the sense that I love Arch. That's my personal preference, but I'm not a fanboy of any religion in this way. Um, so that's my take on that. So FreeBSD, yes, FreeBSD. I have actually a video coming up for you guys. I actually can tell you exactly when. It's gonna come up next Saturday, and I actually use FreeBSD now for a while. And FreeBSD, I'm just gonna share you some thoughts that you will see also on the video. I have very special feelings for FreeBSD. When you use FreeBSD, it's a kind of, I don't know how to explain this in words. It's a kind of different feeling than when you're using Linux. So it sounds funny, but it's really what I feel. So with FreeBSD, it's an extremely compact operating system because it comes everything down from one place. Linux, every Linux distribution, it's based on a GNU Linux, um, where you have the Linux kernel, and then you have the GNU operating system, which was at the base of it, and then every Linux distro is basically GNU Linux with its own spin, and then you have developers developing packages, but it's basically the GNU OS with the Linux kernel. Whereas in FreeBSD, it's everything coming down from one place. And you feel that in the system somehow. You don't receive a lot of updates. Also, it's not a rolling release, but it's extremely stable. It's actually an operating system which is meant, as much as I know, I'm not a FreeBSD expert here, but as much as I know and I read, it's a system which is used a lot in servers, in workstations. And I read some comments from people who are running FreeBSD in servers for like years. They never had to reboot one. So it's a very stable system, and I really like it. Um, it's a very, very interesting operating system. It can be a little bit tricky to to configure, especially on hardware. I had some issues with it on my laptops, especially with the graphic drivers. Somebody's mentioning this also in the comments. I had some issues there with a laptop, which is a Tuxedo laptop I have here, and I will have a review coming up soon about it. That is, because it's a UEFI system, you need to use a certain driver, otherwise it doesn't work. But the driver doesn't have 3D. It can be a bit tricky, but as a system per se, now speaking about the system itself, it's a very, very nice operating system. I really like it. Do you have any experience with Dragonfly? No, I haven't used Dragonfly yet. No. How to install Arch on a MacBook with Boot Camp? Um, well, first of all, it depends on the Mac. And I don't think you would use Boot Camp for that. Anyway, I have a Mac from 2015 here, and I didn't use Boot Camp for that. On the 2015 Macs, you can install Arch, no problem. On newer Macs, you can almost forget it. If your Mac has a T chip, you will not be able to install any Linux distribution, or at least not completely. There are some, I know that some developers are working on that, but it's gonna be still long before. ZFS tutorial soon. Maybe. Let me give you this answer. I don't know. ZFS is actually one of the file system that is used in FreeBSD. FreeBSD comes, well, actually FreeBSD, you can use also ext4 or other file system. But what I read is the Unix file system. It's still in FreeBSD if you install it by default. ZFS is the recommended one, and then you can also install other ones. But ZFS, I haven't work on this yet. So Arco Linux, it's definitely something that I want to look at. I haven't used it yet. Okay, so control RGB on motherboard in Arch. Oh, I haven't dealt with that yet. Sorry. So if you guys don't have any other questions about the video, I'm gonna close this up. Again, this video is going to be posted probably very couple of minutes after the stream in YouTube. So if you want to follow through the installation again, you can just go there and rewind it. And as I said, I'm going to then put in the community maybe Monday a poll for you guys to, with some ideas on how you want to see the next installation. Deepin on Arch is already on the channel, so you can have a look at the video. It's already there. Okay, guys, so I wish you all a great weekend. Enjoy the Sunday and stay safe, stay healthy. These are crazy times with the coronavirus. So stay safe, stay healthy. Okay, wait, somebody asking me. I have a question. When you first boot the Arch installer, the text is very small. Is there a way to enlarge it? Yes, you can enlarge it if you're using the set font command. So set font, and I recommend you the Terminus font, which is already available in the ISO. You can type in set font TER-132N. That's going to make the font start bigger. All right, guys, so I wish you a great weekend. Stay safe, and I'll see you very soon in the next video, which is coming up on Monday. That's going to be about the firewall in Arch Linux, Firewall D. And I have a video which is probably going to be interesting on Thursday, which is going to be VDO. This is one of the topics that I'm looking on for the RHCSA exam. It's the Virtual Data Optimizer, which is very interesting. So you will have a look at that. I think you will love it. So I wish you guys a great weekend, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.